Look at this building. Really look at it. It took centuries to build structures like this. The craftsmanship, the scale, the detail carved into every column, every archway, every dome. We know this because historians told us so, because the timelines say so, because the records confirm it. So tell me, why does this building, this impossibly grand, impossibly detailed structure, appear fully completed in a photograph taken just 18 months after the ground was supposedly broken? And why, when you go looking for the construction records, the workforce logs, the architectural blueprints, do so many of them simply not exist? This is not one building. This is an entire civilization's worth of architecture. And according to the official story, it was built, used for 6 months, and then demolished. Every single piece of it. What if the story we were told about history is not incomplete? What if it was edited? What if an entire civilization was not lost, but deleted? Pull up any European map from the 1600s, then the 1700s, then the early 1800s. Sprawling across the heart of the known world, covering what we now call Russia, Central Asia, Siberia, China's northern reaches, you will find a name. Tartaria, or Grand Tartary, or Great Tartaria. Depending on the cartographer, depending on the century, depending on what they were willing to put on paper. And then, somewhere in the early 19th century, it disappears. Not conquered, not dissolved, not absorbed, just gone. Quietly removed from the maps. Quietly removed from the history books. Tartaria was not a vague geographic term. It was a civilization. Technologically advanced, architecturally sophisticated, globally connected. And it was destroyed, not by war alone, but by something far more total. Something that buried cities. Literally buried them. This is the mud flood theory. Walk through any old European city. Walk through parts of old American cities. Look closely at the ground floors of the oldest buildings. Doors that open below street level. Windows half submerged in earth. First floors that function as basements. The explanation given is that centuries of urban debris gradually raised street levels. After the catastrophe, whatever it was, came the reset. A new ruling class, new governments, new institutions, new textbooks, new maps. A carefully constructed official history designed to explain the world as though the civilization that came before had never existed. The act ends here with a single thought suspended in the dark. Someone built all of this, and someone made sure you would never ask who. Let's be fair. Let's be honest. Because the only way to take any of this seriously is to take the counter-argument seriously first. Historians will tell you, and they are not wrong to say it, that Tartaria was a real geographical designation. A catch-all term invented by medieval European cartographers for the vast, unmapped, and largely unknown steppes of Central Asia. The grand buildings? The historians have answers. The 19th century was the Belle Epoque, the beautiful era, when industrial wealth funded an explosion of neoclassical architecture across Europe and the Americas. The world's fairs were engineering marvels of their time. The familiar architectural styles across continents were the result of shared academic training. These are not unreasonable explanations. And the mud flood? Rising street levels are genuinely well documented in archaeology. Cities build on themselves. Rome's street level has risen by meters over centuries. This is not mysterious. This is sediment. This is time. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, but it is also not nothing. And historians, to their occasional credit, will acknowledge one thing when pressed. The 19th century was a period of extraordinary, almost inexplicable transformation. The pace of change, technological, architectural, social, was unlike anything before or since. Something accelerated, something shifted. They just cannot tell you, with precision, what. Because some questions, even the most credentialed experts prefer not to finish asking. Let us go specific now. Let us go to the places where the comfortable explanations start to unravel at the edges. The 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, Chicago, officially called the White City. 600 acres of neoclassical buildings. Colonnades, domes, fountains, a complete canal system, constructed in under 2 years on swampland by a city that had barely existed for 60 years. And then, 6 months after it opened, it was demolished. Every building, every facade, every column. Why would you demolish it? Why spend more to destroy than to preserve? And where, precisely, are the workforce records? Where are the payroll logs for the tens of thousands of workers who would have been required? The historians say fire, mismanagement, asbestos, symbolic closure, and perhaps all of that is true, but the photographs remain, and in the photographs, the buildings do not look new, they look ancient. Now look at these 4 buildings. Different continents, different cultures, different colonial histories. The official explanation is a shared Beaux-Arts tradition, spread through books and trained architects. And that explanation is partially true. But it does not account for the precision of the similarity. It does not account for the infrastructure underneath some of these buildings, the pneumatic tube systems, the heating vents, the underground networks that later engineers described as already existing when they began their own construction. And then the Smithsonian. Newspaper reports from the 1800s, dozens of them, from different states, different publications, different reporters describe the discovery of giant human skeletons. Heights of 7, 8, 9 feet. Found in burial mounds across the American Midwest. Sent, many of them, to the Smithsonian Institution for study. And then, nothing. The Smithsonian's official position is that these reports were exaggerated, misidentified, or simply invented. Folklore masquerading as journalism. But why would dozens of independent journalists, in different states, across multiple decades, all independently invent the same specific story? What is buried in those archives? What sits in the boxes no one is permitted to open? The questions keep compounding, and the silence keeps answering. Every crime has a motive. Every cover-up has a beneficiary. If we accept, even as a thought experiment, that a civilization was erased, that maps were redrawn, records destroyed, buildings demolished or repurposed, and an entire generation of children quietly absorbed into a new world order, then we must ask the oldest question in history. Who gained? Look at the timeline. The early to mid-19th century. The period in which Tartaria vanishes from maps. The period in which the modern nation-state system crystallizes across Europe and the Americas. The period in which centralized banking becomes the dominant global financial architecture. Wealth consolidation on a scale previously impossible. And to consolidate wealth, you need to consolidate the story. Consider also the institutions that controlled the flow of historical knowledge in that century. Universities with deep ties to state power. Museums funded by imperial governments. Encyclopedias written by committees appointed by ruling bodies. And threading through all of it, Freemasonry. Is that sinister? Or is it simply the way power has always worked? And what about the fires? The Great Fire of London. The burning of the Library of Alexandria. The destruction of Aztec codices by Spanish priests. The history of history is the history of things being burned. Coincidence is a comfortable word. It lets us keep walking. But here is what we know with certainty. The winners write the history books. We have always known this. History is written by the winners. But what happens when the winners erase the war itself? I am not going to tell you that Tartaria was real. I am not going to tell you it wasn't. What I will tell you is this. The questions are real. The maps are real. The photographs are real. The newspaper reports, the architectural anomalies, the orphaned children, the missing records, these are not inventions of the internet. Maybe Tartaria was a cartographic placeholder. The grand buildings were the product of industrial ingenuity. And the missing records are missing because records were poorly kept in the 19th century. Maybe. Or maybe the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Maybe the most dangerous thing a civilization can do, the most effective way to erase something, is not to destroy it entirely. It is to leave just enough behind that the story feels complete. They feel like history. The truth doesn't bury itself. Someone buries it.